Hey guys, my name is Ryan.
And my name is Mysca.
And welcome to Overwatch Central. I have no idea what we're in for. What are we doing today?
Okay, so basically, I had this idea. I briefly presented it to Ryan. We're going to be going through your guys' issues with the game, whatever it is, hardware related, game related, sensitivity related, gameplay related, whatever it is. And we're going to be doing that at r/Overwatch University. This is a great subreddit. I definitely recommend you to go and check it out. There are a lot of good guides and posts on there that are pinned and so on. Go check it out. It's a great subreddit. Link is going to be below. Anyway, we're going to be going through some questions, some discussion posts and some that we've seen on here, and just kind of like answering some things that you may have kind of missed and questions that you didn't really know that you should be asking. And
Yeah.
So yeah, let's just get straight into it. Alright, so first up, we have a post talking about a 144Hz monitor change. It's called "Changing to 144Hz has changed my effectiveness more than I could ever have hoped for." This is only really related to people that play on PC. If you don't know what this guy's talking about, basically, on your monitor you have a refresh rate. This is how many times your monitor is checking
Constantly
for new images, basically. Yeah. So 60 Hz, for example, will do 60 FPS. It'll do 30 FPS. It'll be able to check for those.
I don't know what I'm doing. That's refresh, but 144 Hz is like twice as much. So you basically get not really more frames.
You can play at a higher frame rate. Basically, your monitor will read more frames a second, so you can read up to 144 FPS and play at a higher frame rate, which means that everything will look smoother. You will see more because when you turn around very quickly, there will be more specific frames to show you what's going on. Now, okay, with a very basic explanation of what 144 Hz is for a monitor, basically why this is so important to anyone who's playing on PC and why this is much bigger than having like a 4K monitor or whatever, is that you really do see more. Your perception of the game and how you perceive things and see things and sort of your game sense in a way.
It feels like the input sharper too.
Yeah, everything can really greatly improve. It feels like you have more control of the game. Everything feels snappier. You feel like you see more. And if you've never tried playing at 144 Hz, I would heavily recommend you to go try that out, even if it's just like at a shop somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
So we have a question here that's really good. What is map control and the difference between main and off tanks? Map control, I'd say, is more about creating space. You could do a really good job of that as a Reinhardt or a Winston, whatever. Think of it as a game of like Splatoon, where the area that you control is like in your color and you want to cake the map completely in your team's
What
color.
if I don't know what Splatoon is?
Well, it's just you paint the floor, and like when you're creating space, you're painting the floor in your color. So if you're sat back right at your spawn, you have no control. The enemy has all of the control because they're pushing right into you. Yeah. However, you know, if you get picks as a Reinhardt, you want to push forward, take control of that space, paint it your color. That'd be how I describe like creating space.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. For the off tank / main tank part of this question, I love that they're two very different questions.
Very different questions, very big questions too.
Very big questions, and very important. Okay, so we talked about map control. This is exactly what a main tank wants to really handle. If you're playing Reinhardt, you're playing Winston, you're playing Orisa, this is what your game is about. If you're playing Orisa and you're the sort of person that puts down your shield right where you're standing and you're just leaving a bunch of ground in front of you, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
If you're playing Winston, Reinhardt, it's a little bit more active. With Reinhardt, you hold W, you spam your shield up and down to kind of try to keep it up and push away the enemy to create space for your team, right? Okay. You do the same thing as Winston, except you can do that in much greater ways by jumping up and things. You have much more mobility, but the essential thing is the same. You push forward, you put down a shield, you create a bit of space for yourself, and you try to stay alive and last there, so you kind of grab the attention of the enemy team, and by doing that, directly relieve pressure from your team, right? Yeah. It's not necessarily about holding up a shield or not, it's just about grabbing the enemy team's attention and creating space.
Yep.
Your off tank is there kind of on the side to help you out. You kind of it's kind of like playing just kind of a support for a tank, yet also being damaged.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the nice thing about playing off tank. You're there to help your main tank stay alive, stay in the fight, and keep going. Yet you can also create damage, which is why I like to look at the off tank as kind of like being a bit more offensive as well. In this case, Sorry is a great example. You have the bubble to relieve pressure from a Winston, a Reinhardt pushing on your team. But you also have a lot of damage. D.Va is the same thing. You can provide a lot of pressure.
Well, all of them do a lot of damage.
A whole lot of damage. But you also have your right click, your defense matrix, to sort of peel a bit and protect your main tank a bit more. And this is the off-tank, main tank relationship and how that really relates to map control. Because map control is so much of the game, and it's the main tank's worry that the off tank is supposed to sort of cater to.
One thing I wanted to highlight actually was it was more of a tip, not a question, but tip for climbing, allow yourself to be carried sometimes. And I seem to see a lot of people going from all the way from Platinum to now sort of like mid-masters. There's so many players, especially playing like roles like a Sunyata or a Reinhardt or an off-tank, as we've just mentioned. People are trying to do so much to like try and carry the game. And sometimes, you know, I'm not ashamed to be like play Mercy and stuff. Some people are just very much like, I refuse to play that hero. Sometimes you just need to acknowledge that there's somebody on your team that might be a Smurf, that just might be having an amazing game on Widowmaker, and you have to let them do their thing. Yeah. Being a Reinhardt, carrying isn't necessarily just running into the back line, getting earth shatters.
6 people.
Because to be fair, that could be the Zarya that's bubbling you. Like, it's more carrying a game, and I'm going to keep reiterating this, is more discreet than anything, especially with these heroes. Yeah. Sometimes carrying as Reinhardt is constantly having your shield up where others would be swinging, flame striking, trying to earth shatter. Because you're doing sometimes just doing your job is enough of a win condition to ease the like trounce fights completely. So save the experimenting for games that, you know, the enemy team have 6 minutes on the clock for taking like 1/3 of Volskaya. Yeah. That's where you can be a bit more experimental with what you're trying to do. But sometimes just like, I'm playing Reinhardt, I need to protect my team. Don't go off trying to do crazy stuff. If you try and carry, more or less you're just going to try and feed. One question that we get a lot, and I know the pros get, people sort of copy that stuff, is all about sensitivity. This is more of a question on how to up it, but I think that this is just such a big talking point that like it's just worth talking.
You shouldn't ever have to ask this question. That's the real answer, really. Like, you shouldn't ever have to ask it. If you're asking, is my sensitivity too low or high, it's already sort of going wrong somewhere else. A lot of the time, sure, you can ask, hey, is my sensitivity considered low or considered high?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'd say a very baseline sensitivity, if you are playing on PC, because this is a very PC-related question, about 800 DPI and maybe about 10 in-game is considered pretty vanilla sensitivity if you're looking into sensitivities. I'd say that's around a pretty sort of normal sensitivity. And if you want to go higher or lower, fine. I am personally a little bit higher, I think, at 11 currently, because of main tank. Yeah. That's just what it's like. I don't really aim. So I play Winston and Reinhardt there. But you shouldn't really ever have to ask this question precisely. It shouldn't be, I'm on 600 DPI, and I'm currently playing Soldier at 5.76 sensitivity. Nobody's going to say, oh, go up to 6.3. You'll gain like 500 SR, dude. No worries. Like, that's never going to happen.
If you want a good measurement, the best way is to just... People have different mouse mat sizes, different desks. Sometimes you only have that much space to work with, in which case that's going to affect your DPI and stuff and how much space you can actually use.
I think just get a bigger mouse pad, regardless, if you're playing on PC. There are very few mouse pads that are kind of like too big, because nobody really makes too big mouse mats. And from there you can kind of work out what your personal preference is, because that's what it is at the end of the day.
One thing I'd say is just don't have different sensitivities for different heroes, unless it's Reinhardt Winston, because you need a little bit more space to move around. But don't have it different for like Soldier and McCree, because you're sort of muscle memory. Yeah, muscle memory is going to be all over the place because it's not consistent. Try out stuff, but don't change your sensitivity after every single game, because again, you won't have that consistency with your aim at all, and that's probably where you're going wrong. You're doing too much about your sensitivity as opposed to you just, you know, staying on the wrong one.
Finally, we have a question about Sunyata. When should I use Transcendence? This is a pretty big question, honestly, because a lot of the time, especially actually in Overwatch League, there's a lot of kind of, different type of Sunyata players and different types of plays with Sunyata. So I feel like, there are basically two things you can use Transcendence for. One, to keep your whole team alive, or one, to just keep you alive as a Sunyata. Both things can be the correct play. A lot of the time, you just want to find heal value. That's all you want. You want to find a lot of value with the heal. If you're going down low yourself, and you see your main tank on critical too, but you're kind of already winning the fight, but you're not sure if you're going to win it, that's a fine trance. That's a good trance. That's a great trance, in fact, because you're not only making sure that you stay alive, but you also make sure that your main tank stays alive. Now, the timing of that trance and how you learn that is something that you can only learn by really playing more and more. Learn by doing, yeah. Yeah, exactly. You have to play more and more, see, am I trancing too late? Am I trancing too early? Am I too scared to trance? Am I just trancing too often and then I don't have it when I need to? Great thing to check out in VOD reviews, just for your own VODs. Just record your games and check it out, because trance is not an ultimate you get that often. You're going to be able to kind of check when you have it, and just quickly look back at what did I do with that trance. Really easy to improve on Sunyata in that aspect.
Especially having a hindsight being like, you know, hindsight is 2020, so you know those situations where I did this too early, too late. I think the main thing I want to add about Transcendence is, you know, the obvious answer is trends when you're stuck in a graviton. However, I see far too many Zenyatas, and I've done this myself, I'm guilty of this too, just literally holding on to Transcendences and using them in gravitons. That could, like, the fight could be well over by then, but I often see too many Zenyatas not actually using Transcendence in appropriate situations because they're like, oh, but they've got graviton ready. It's like, sure, but they already won that fight anyway, so that's kind of pointless. So as a sort of rule, yeah, keep it for graviton, but also don't be afraid to use it before or after in certain situations.
After that, the next step after that is kind of knowing when to tell your team, let's go for retake, trans, and then go on to, say, King's Row first, you're trying to retake it from defense, something like that. Yeah, exactly. Just aggressively trying to retake an objective. That's kind of like the last step of knowing when you can and can't do that as a Zen, and that can be very hard, but yeah, they're kind of three steps to it. Know how to get value, know what to play around in terms of other ultimates on the enemy team and your team for that matter, and then finally know how to retake. So yeah, kind of learn them in that order. I almost
that's just a few questions that we wanted to go over on Overwatch University, provide our own answers. If you do have any questions of your own, do put them in the comments below. We may do another video of this in the future, so if you do like it, do like too. And thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.